Hey guys, this is Salty. Welcome to my breakdown of the easiest and the hardest specs to play in the War Within. The release date is quickly approaching and I feel like we're close enough now where I can confidently give you guys my take on where each class and specialization stands in terms of overall difficulty. Okay, let's take a look at Balanced Druid first of all. This is a standard build and spend class using the Eclipse system. The single target and AoE rotations are not difficult but can be annoying. There are not many abilities you need to worry about in your rotations. There's good mobility. In Mythic Plus, you will find yourself needing to continually monitor and reapply your dots. This also means that there is significant ramp up time required for balance to really shine. Single target damage is also currently on the lower side. This is not a particularly difficult spec, but there are easier ones. I feel pretty comfortable placing balance in the B tier. Okay, let's take a look at Arcane Mage now. So this is a particularly challenging spec to learn and not one that I would recommend for beginners. You need to be fully aware of your mana and cooldown usage at all times to really shine. There are many different abilities that you need to be using. The rotations for single target and AoE are difficult with multiple phases, including an opener, burn phase, conserve phase, and different priorities for each. This will be one of the best Mythic Plus specs in the War Within, but you'll really have to work for it. As I said, one of the hardest specs in the game, but not the hardest. I'm placing Arcane into C tier. Okay, let's take a look at Beast Mastery Hunter. This is hands down the easiest range DPS in the game. There have been some big talent changes, but the rotations for single target and Mythic Plus are pretty much the same as Dragonflight with some small exceptions. The rotations are extremely simple to learn. Every ability can be cast while you're moving. Still does great damage despite being easy to play. Personally, I think that BM is the most fun spec to play in the game. There's not a whole lot more to say. Beast Mastery is easy. I would strongly recommend this for new players, beginners, you'll love it, but also veterans who want an easy class to master. This is going straight to the S tier. Alright, let's take a quick look at Affliction Warlock now. If you enjoy a dot management playstyle, then Affliction is for you, but you will need a good dot tracking add-on to master it. Requires a lot of ramp up time and has pretty much no burst damage. Quite a few different abilities in your rotations. Has excellent sustained DPS and has decent single target damage with strong AoE spread, but again that ramp up time can be super annoying, especially for Mythic Plus. They have great mobility given the dot playstyle. Not the hardest spec to play, but probably not for super new players. I feel pretty comfortable placing Affliction in the middle of the pack here somewhere. Okay, while we're talking about Warlocks, let's take a look at Destruction. This is one of the easiest specs in the War Within. Very simple rotations for single target, AoE and cleave. Much better at single target and two target fights than straight AoE however. They have low mobility which can be annoying, but they only have a few abilities that you need to look after in your rotation. Only have a single 3-minute cooldown, which is not very exciting. If planting yourself and watching your Chaos Bolts crit for big numbers sounds appealing, then I would suggest Destruction. Not as easy as Beast Mastery Hunter, but extremely close. I'm putting Destro into A tier. Okay, where are we? Right, let's take a look at Frost Mage. This is a reasonably simple spec to play and definitely the easiest of the mage specs in the War Within. It centers around the Frostbolt to Flurry to Ice Lance combo, as well as keeping all of your cooldowns active. There is a fair bit to consider here, but I found it pretty easy to pick up when I tested it in the beta. It has more buttons to press than some of the easier specs as well, has great utility and mobility, excellent burst damage for single target and AoE. Not the easiest, not the hardest. I'll drop Frost into the B tier, I reckon. Okay, and it's on to Marksmanship Hunter now. More difficult than Beast Mastery for sure, but still a pretty straightforward spec. Has high burst AoE, though it is hard capped. Lower single target damage, but still competitive. High mobility, but nothing compared to BM obviously. MM mainly just requires a fair amount of planning and deciding when you want to unload, which can make it tricky for pugging keys. Requires more attention to focus than Beast Mastery as well. Overall, I would say that it's not as hard as BM or Destro. I feel comfortable placing it in the middle of the pack in terms of difficulty. Not a terrible choice for beginners if you like this type of play. Alright, let's talk about Devastation Evoker. Personally, I think that this is one of the easiest specs to pick up in the game. Has an easy rotation, high mobility. They are a mid-range class, which can take some getting used to. They have excellent utility. Only a few abilities to focus on, which is extremely beginner friendly. Can be a little bit squishy, but not as bad as some. Not BM Hunter easy, but I have no issue placing Devastation into the A tier, and I would not have a problem recommending the class to new players. Okay, and we're on to the final mage spec here, Fire. Not as difficult as Arcane, but still a pretty tricky spec to play, you really need to know when to open up your burst window. This can be long, and if used at the wrong time, will significantly affect your DPS. Quite a few abilities in your rotation, so not particularly beginner friendly. Not great for pugging keys subsequently, since you'll never know when your tank is going to make a big pull. Has strong single target and cleave damage, and very mobile for a mage class. The rotation can be a bit finicky, as you have different phases including pre-combustion, entering combustion, rotation during combustion. You need to know how to effectively chain critical strikes. It all sounds like a lot, and it can be, especially for newer players. I would not suggest this for beginners, but I have no issue placing fire into the C tier. Okay, let's talk about Elemental Shaman. In my opinion, this is one of the hardest specs to play in the War Within. There are several different playstyles to choose from. It has excellent damage for single target and spread cleave between 2 to 3 targets. Has good survivability, but also has limited mobility. This spec has a lot of abilities that need to be used for single target and AoE, and it can be overwhelming, especially for newer players. It's sort of difficult rotations to learn as well. If you take a look at some of the guides on Icy Veins or Wowhead, you will understand exactly what I mean. Definitely not advised for beginners, but if you are looking for a challenging spec to play, then look no further. This one can safely go into the D tier. Very difficult. Alright, then let's do Demonology Warlock. Personally, I think this one is one of the easiest specs to pick up. Not as easy as Destruction, mind you, but still a good candidate for new players. Does have a fair amount happening. There's a bit of ramp up time and just time needed to build up your resources. Has high mobility with strong single target and cleave damage. Can have excellent AoE burst with the right amount of resources. As you probably guessed, this one centers around summoning a large number of demons, but the rotations for single target and AoE are very straightforward, and they only require the use of a few abilities for each. The playstyle can be annoying if you don't like the idea of having to wait to build up your demon army before you can do any damage. Having said that, I have no problem placing this into the A tier. Very easy to learn and to play. Alright, let's take a look at Augmentation Evoker. Again, this evoker specialization is extremely beginner friendly. It's a unique support style range damage class with great utility. Augmentation can also be extremely technical as well, just depending on how well you want to play. Has excellent mobility, not many abilities to worry about, requires good character placement, again depending on how efficiently and effectively you want to be buffing your group. This will definitely be one of the top picks for Mythic Plus this season. The 25-yard range can take some getting used to again. Obviously your groups are going to love you because of how much you buff their output. As I mentioned, this is an easy class to pick up, but can be a difficult one to master. I'm going to place Augmentation into the A tier alongside Devastation. Okay, and finally, let's take a quick look at Shadow Priest. This one is another particularly challenging spec to play, arguably the hardest. There are a lot of spells and abilities in your rotations, and beginners will be overwhelmed for sure. Your dot management will require a lot of attention, and you will struggle in lower Mythic Plus keys due to enemies dying too quickly. This will be one of the strongest DPS in the War Within, but only if you know how to play it correctly. Has limited mobility, just a really hard spec to pick up. I do not suggest this for newer or beginner players, it's just too hard. On the other hand, however, if you are a veteran and looking to do the most damage possible for your Mythic Plus group or raid, then I would seriously consider Shadow Priest. But in terms of difficulty, Shadow is going straight to the D tier. Extremely hard. And that's about it, guys. I hope you found this useful, especially if you're still trying to decide what to main or what ults you want to play this season. Stay tuned for more of the War Within content in the coming days, and I will catch you next time. Cheers.